just as far as the eye can see. The flowers of Niagara, they are God's greatest gift to me. The flowers of Niagara, cherries and peaches and pears, proving the worth of this elegant earth with a fragrance that lightens the air. No matter where I am standing, Port Colborne to Stony Creek, the flowers of Niagara are God's greatest gift to me. Now some would divine that the juice
Hello?
of the vine
Everybody, can I have your attention, please? Can I have everyone's attention, please? Take your seats. We got a full house here today, so we're trying to keep the aisles as clear as we can. If you could please take your seats. There's also overflow seating in the museum to watch the event live on the live stream. So we'll be starting shortly, but if everybody could take their seats so we can kind of figure out some logistics here, that'd be great. Thanks very much.
You plucked from a tree, and I've wandered too far in this country, from Newfoundland out to BC. When the flowers of Niagara were God's greatest gift to me. There's a young boy sitting on the shore not far above the locks, fishing pole and broad-brimmed hat, his back against a rock. You might think he's fast asleep, but should he hear the wake of a passing ship wash on the shore, he's quickly wide awake. Be it brigantine or barkentine, a schooner or a barge, be it a salty, a lake, or from the smallest to the large, be it steam or sail or tow rope that moves her up the stream, it's still the stuff of dreams. The float is bobbing up and down, our young lad doesn't care. This boat is leading his imagination anywhere. He's heading up to Thunder Bay with Voyageur canoes, or he's off to war in Europe with the Haida passing through. Be it icebreaker or scow or captured German submarine, the Royal Yacht Britannia with all her lights agleam, be it heading down to dry dock for a scrape, a paint, a mend, or to the graveyard at Ramey's Bend. The Welland takes a young lad down to the sea in ships, past cities with their buildings taller than Niagara's cliffs, through the 1,000 islands where bold pirates once made free, past belugas of the Saguenay out to the open sea. Be it pilot, boat, or dredge, be it new or old or hulk, be it tanker or a tug, cargo and barrel or in bulk, be it diesel, sail, or tow rope that moves her up the stream, it's still the stuff of dreams. William Hamilton Merritt would stare at the water as it flowed down the 12-mile creek. There's enough in the stream to keep his mill wheel turning today, but there might not be next week, for the temperature rises and the water level drops and the wheel slows down and it finally stops. William Hamilton Merritt would tear at his hair and wonder at the whim of his God. who gave him this grand opportunity for fortune and left it so fatally flawed. If he could just dig a ditch to bring water from the Welland, then the wheel would keep on turning, there'd be flour he could sell. And so William Hamilton Merritt used the carrot and the stick to make politics bend his way. There were lots of other businessmen who knew if he got water power, they too could find a way to make it pay. So he got himself elected to the family compact and used public-private partnerships to get money for his contracts. William Hamilton Merritt wasn't scared to reach farther than the average fellow in Niagara. Just listen to a list of some of the things he started and see if it doesn't stagger ya. Salt mine, flour mill, distillery and store, canal, career at Queen's Park, and a bridge over the gorge. And it all started when William Hamilton Merritt would stare at the water as it flowed down the 12-mile creek. Come all ye lads, both stout and strong, shovel and mud, and pay attention to my song. The deep cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. From Allenburg to Port Robinson, shovel and mud, from cold gray dawn to setting sun. The deep cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. 2 miles long, 50 feet deep, shovel and mud. Mr. Merritt's mighty lucky that we work so cheap. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. $50 will buy you a day, shovel and mud, muscle and heart against Chippewa clay. The deep cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Shatters bones and boulders, shovel and mud, 100-pound sacks to stack on your shoulder. The cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Buckets of whiskey to muffle the pain, shovel and mud, slide down to the bottom and do it again. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood, deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Slab town's thick with shadows and bad whiskey flows too free. Slab town's thick with shadows and bad whiskey flows too free. There's murder in the air tonight, I feel its chilly hands on me. Riders on the highway, hoofbeats down the towpath road. Riders on the highway, hoofbeats down the towpath road. It's too late to be hiding when you hear the rifles load. Someone's crying in the darkness, blood is running through their hands. Someone's crying in the darkness, blood is running through their hands. There are stains that will not wash away and laws that will not stand. You can cross the stormy ocean searching for a little peace. You can pray someday the greatest will change places with the least, but the soldiers keep marching. You can't outrun the priest. The sun comes up on Slab Town, merciless and fire red. The sun comes up on Slab Town, merciless and fire red. Gather your shovels and go bury your dead. You can cross the stormy ocean searching for a little peace. You can pray someday the greatest will change places with the least, but the soldiers keep marching. You can't outrun the priest. Slab Town's thick with shadows and bad whiskey flows too free. Slab Town's thick with shadows and bad whiskey flows too free. There's murder in the air tonight, I feel its chilly hands on me. There's murder in the air tonight, I feel its chilly hands on me. There's a thin skin of ice at the edge of the lock. Icicles break from the chains. William Hamilton Merritt walks the deck of the Annie and Jane. From Port Dalhousie to Chippewa, through the sleet and the wind and the rain. Here's to the horses hired to tow the proud Annie and Jane. Their hooves beat out a steady pace, the shoulders heave and strain, and the ship climbs up the mountain face, the ascendant Annie and Jane. From Port Dalhousie to Chippewa, through the sleet and the wind and the rain. Here's to the horses hired to tow the proud Annie and Jane. William Hamilton Merritt spins his top hat and complains of the mud and the ice and the cold, cold winds that slow the Annie and Jane. The horses' hooves on the broad towpath ring out a glad refrain, and they echo from the walls of Chippewa to the deck of the Annie and Jane. From Port Dalhousie to Chippewa, through the sleet and the wind and the rain. Here's to the horses hired to tow the proud Annie and Jane. Here's to the horses hired to tow the proud Annie and Jane. lightning come out of the hills last night and struck a tree outside my door. Laura, I do believe God intend we don't live here anymore. Hear the thunder come a-rumbling just like wheels down a railroad track, rolling all the way to Canada across that line where they can't ever bring us back. I got scars around my ankles, I got scars around my wrist. I'm gonna strike away these irons, I will no longer live like this. Pack a sack of blacksmith tools, Laura, carry what you can. And tonight when darkness falls, we'll say a prayer and put our lives into God's hands. Conductor, grant us passage. Engineer, give us Godspeed. Turn our faces to the North Star, see where this path might lead. We'll be running through the fields by night, hiding in the woods by day. Every breath like fire, hear the far-off hound dog bay. Pray the face be friendly, we must hope the smile be kind when we're station to station on this northbound underground lifeline. Conductor, grant us passage. Engineer, give us Godspeed. Turn our faces to the North Star and see where this path might lead. Come out of the hills last night and struck a tree outside my door. Laura, I do believe God intend we don't live here anymore. Hear the thunder come a-rumbling just like wheels down a railroad track, rolling all the way to Canada across that line where they can't ever bring us back. William Lyon Mackenzie slept here. At least that's what my grandmother said. Her grandmother gave him the last of the whiskey and let him sleep in her grandfather's bed. William Lyon Mackenzie slept here, safe from the long weary arm of the law. The compact had put a price on his head, but he slipped through the short hills and past Chippewa. Ah, William Lyon Mackenzie slept here. There's a hand-painted sign nearby, nailed to a tree, says a red-headed shadow was all that they saw, but he left in his wake our hard-won liberty. Slept here, not far from the banks of the Welland Canal, and then over the river he fled fast and free. What Pete Rock will play at our friend's funeral. William Lyon Mackenzie Mackenzie slept here where his printing press pounded out all of his iron. Where can we pray for his timely return? What pulpit could stand in the face of his fire? All along the Niagara escarpment, the rumors fly fast and as thick as the birds. William Lion is leaving us nothing but the ghost of his anger and the echo of his words. Slept here and we all say it proudly. Whatever the truth and the water runs down, and it runs cold and clear, just like the dreams of our innocent youth. William Lyon Mackenzie slept here. At least that's what my grandmother said. Her grandmother gave him the last of the whiskey and let him sleep in her grandfather's bed.
We're not on. We good? Can I have your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen? Hello? Thank you very much. This is sort of your 5-minute warning. We're sorry for the delay. We had to sort out some issues with our live stream. Again, can we just keep the aisles clear because there are going to be people moving through. There's actually some decent space over on my right, your left. And if you don't want to stand, there's still room inside the museum to watch this live on the live stream, which is back up and running. So thank you for your patience, and we will be starting shortly.
Heavy laden arcs piled high with whiskey, flour, and pork, gliding down toward the lock. The busy docks.
On summer afternoons I think I'd hail each boat she passed by, with lumber from Davis Mills, night a gypsum gleaming white, steamer dove riding fast from Brantford south to Buffalo. I'd watch her as the wheel flashed past and dream of worlds I'd never
Oh, say, don't you remember the sound of the breeze that come to the Loch Ness on the Grand River from above, being my home side. I headed south along the way from running from a dying farm to study law and politics, trading the musket in my arms for a way.
We good? We good?
Yeah, just try and get into the mic as opposed to over it.
Okay.
And then we don't have
So I just got to stand up, is what you're saying. All right. This good? Yeah?
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is sort of your last warning. It's a little chilly outside today, so if you prefer not to stand, there's plenty of room inside the museum to watch this on the live stream. Any takers? Anyone? Bueller? All right. All right, we're going to start off the event today with the Eagle Honor Song, sung by Nicole Joy Fraser, and I'll ask her to take the stage now.
Because this is an honor song, can I please ask everybody to stand? Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. Bienvenue. Bindigan. Because the eagle's spirit is the one that flies the closest to the Creator, we thought it was appropriate to start with the Eagle Honor Song and to acknowledge all those spirits that came before us, all the spirits that are part of this ceremony here today, and that we have those good intentions as we acknowledge those fallen workers. And it's the reason why we're all here and that we're connected to Mother Earth, to each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Welcome, bienvenue. My name is Grant LaFlèche. For those of you who don't know me, I'm your MC for today, and I'm a reporter with the St. Catharines Standard. It was a post-media paper, and I have been writing about the men who died during the construction of the Welland Canal for roughly the past 5 years, starting in 2013. So I was honored to accept the invitation from St. Catharines Mayor Walter Sendzik to speak here today. Before we get underway, and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the First Nations, which we currently stand on today. And those are the territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Six Nations of the Grand River. So we're here to remember the men who died building the fourth Welland Canal, which is here today. And the memorial you'll be able to see later is directly behind us. The canal started planning in 1913, construction began in 1914, was officially opened in 1932, and then there was an additional 3 years of work until 1935, including dredging and some additional work that was done. Between 1914 and 1935, 137 souls were lost. Fathers, sons, brothers, uncles, cousins. Sometimes they died one at a time, sometimes they died in large groups, and on tragic occasions, sometimes a father, a son, and a grandfather would die in the same incident. The oldest man to die was 69 years old. The youngest was a mere 15, and he was buried in the first suit he ever bought from the job money he got from the job he just had only a few days before he was killed. Now, we have a packed house here today, and many of you in the audience are descendants of the men who are honored at this memorial. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize you. So if you are a family member or descendant of the fallen, can you please stand or raise your hand? Wow. Thank you so much for being with us today. At the end of the day, you are the reason that we are here. I've been told that many of you have traveled to be here. We have family members who have come from across Ontario, some who have come across the country. There are many people here from the United States. We even have guests from California, I understand, and at least one family has crossed the pond to be here with us from England. So it's a tremendous honor to have you all here today. For many residents of St. Catharines and of the Niagara region, the construction of the Welland Canal feels like ancient history. We see it every day. We pass it as a landmark. Most of us aren't giving it much thought. But for the people that you just saw raise their hands, it's more than that. And some of them remember the day they lost someone when the canal was built. There was a gentleman by the name of Fergus Nottingham who died on the construction in 1929. His brother Roy Nottingham was to be with us today. He's 102 years old. Unfortunately, he's not feeling well, so he couldn't be with us today. The three grandchildren of David Radford, who was killed in 1930, are all in their 90s, and they're all here with us today. And that's Vernon Jones, Dorothy Walters, and Loris Fenora. Can the three of you raise your hands if you're here? There they are. Thank you so much for being here. Every family who lost someone had their family's lives changed in a blink of an eye. It's important to remember that in many cases, when one of the men were killed, he would leave behind a widow who had family of 5, 6, 7 kids, which she had to raise on her own. It was like a stone in the pond every time one of these men died, and the ripples went on for generations. The presence of these family members here confirms the importance of this memorial. For today, we are keeping a promise made to your families in 1932. And this memorial is our community's way of saying that your loss will never again be forgotten. Before we proceed, I just want to point out, if you've looked at your programs today, there's a slight typo. So I suppose it's useful to have the journalist point this out. Samuel Brennan was listed in the program as dying in 1932. He, in fact, passed away on the construction on January 7th, 1935. When the construction of the Welland Canal began, the Anglican Church opened a mission to take care of the spiritual needs of its workers. The longest-serving member of the clergy of that mission was one Reverend Thomas Ibbott, who served from 1925 to 1930. And we have with us today his great-nephew, who is also a clergyman, and he's come down from his church near Smith Falls. And in talking to him today, I found out that we're both graduates of Bishop's University, so it's odd how small the circle is surrounding this memorial. So I'd like to invite to the stage right now Reverend Dr. Ronald Hunt.
I would like to offer a prayer for the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial. Our Father in heaven, we stand here today as recipients of one of the world's great marvels, a 25-mile ditch carved to attach the Great Lakes to the St. Lawrence River, which changed the navigational, economic, political, and social life of North America at a significant time in our history. Today, we celebrate and remember the lives of those workers in the construction of the Welland Canal. Over 100 workers lost their lives, and over 1,000 workers were injured. Today, we also remember and lift up to you those whose names are lost in history. The wives, the sons and daughters, the mothers and fathers and friends of those who lost their lives here. We remember the Reverend Dr. Thomas Ibbott, an Anglican parish priest, who as padre to the workers on the canal offered a rich and rewarding pastoral ministry to all those in his care at this time. Father, we pray for those who continue to work in the operation of this Welland Canal. Keep us ever mindful of its time and its place in our history. We ask this in the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave us praying to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Hunt. As you can imagine, we're here to remember many people, and we have a lot of people to thank. This project has been supported by so many people in so many different ways, not the least of which were the openings of family photo albums and archives, the releasing of historic documents, and the stories that have been gathered by researchers over the last 5 years who have worked diligently to make sure that every man who died was included in today's memorial. Some of those contributions were made by the family members of Archibald McKinley, who died in 1929. His daughter June is here. June, can I find you somewhere, June? There she is. Hi, June. So June and her family members, Rob and Brian Jobson, have kindly donated the shuttles that help so many of us access nearby parking today from their business, Daniel Coach Lines. So thank you, June, and your family members for being here today. Our next speaker represents the first major funder of the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial. The Government of Canada, through a Department of Canadian Heritage, provided a legacy grant recognizing the 100-year anniversary of the first death of the canal construction, who was William Merritt, who drowned on July 23rd, 1914. So please welcome to the stage our St. Catharines Member of Parliament, the Honourable Chris Biddle.
Thank you so much, Grant. Before I begin my speech, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of individuals who are here with us today. The first one is my colleague from Niagara South, the honourable member, from Niagara Centre, Vance Badaway, who is passionate about transportation issues and the Welland Canal. The other person I'd like to acknowledge is our Member of Provincial Parliament, Jim Bradley, who's with us here today and is always passionate about St. Catharines and our local history. It's a true privilege to be here this afternoon at the unveiling of the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial. This honor is made even greater since we are in the presence of so many descendants of the 137 men who died in the construction of this incredible feat of infrastructure beside us. As citizens in Niagara, the Welland Canal is an integral part of our identity. Employment, economic development, even its geography cuts the peninsula in half. We trace the history of the canal back before Confederation, the predecessor canals, that linked our country before the railroad. Our relationship with the canal is a key part of what makes us Niagara. In fact, the 43.5-kilometer canal from Port Weller to Port Colborne influenced the very development of St. Catharines and our fellow canal communities. When this canal was built, jobs came with the construction. $130 million provided for employment and opportunity for residents of St. Catharines and Niagara, many of whom were newcomers looking to settle their roots and make a new life in Canada. But that history and economic development is built upon the deaths of 137 and the injuries of countless more. It's difficult to fathom the working conditions that led to so much death and injury. Worker safety didn't seem to enter into the equation. This was a time in our history where a life, from management's point of view, was often expendable, especially when dealing with workers from a lower economic standing, and many of whom were new immigrants to Canada. There are those who would demonize the labor movement, but it's workplaces like this, and organized labor that fought for greater regulation, greater safety, and workers' rights. I want to thank Unifor, the Seafarers International Union, and the Niagara Region Labour Council, who are sponsors to this monument, and fellow unions for ensuring the right to workers and their safety are protected. The Government of Canada promised to honor these men. That promise was broken, and that broken promise was forgotten for far too long. Until 2013, the St. Catharines Standard began publishing articles telling stories of the men who died during the construction of the Welland Canal, and a desire to create a permanent memorial and to these men was reignited in our community. I want to thank Grant. He understated it a little bit. Wendy Metcalf and Arden Fair, who brought the story forward. Without your efforts, I'm not sure that we would be here today. Grant, it's difficult to be a newspaper reporter right now, especially for a community newspaper. But I hope you understand the importance of your work and that of your colleagues, as it can have meaningful change for our city, and in this case, our collective history. Since the articles, the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial Task Force has done an incredible amount of research, fundraising, and planning to make today a reality. A successful project of this magnitude isn't possible without commitment from all parts of our community, so I want to thank the task force, the donors, the City of St. Catharines, the Regional Municipality of Niagara. As this has been a project that's been years in the making, it's also spanned a couple of parliaments. And I would like to thank Malcolm Allen, former Member of Parliament for Niagara Centre, for all the work that he put into this. And I would also like to thank my predecessor, Rick Dykstra, and the previous government that contributed $150,000 to support the memorial in 2014. I'm also pleased, however, to confirm that our government has committed an additional $150,000 in funding to ensure that the Government of Canada, in full partnership with the City of St. Catharines and the Niagara region, to ensure that there is no shortfall in this project and to help enshrine these 137 names in permanent remembrance. The Welland Canal and the men that died during its construction have not only permanently changed the course of Niagara, but they played a role in shaping Canada. It is important that not only as a community, but as a country, we honor them and fulfill our promise to remember them. Congratulations to the member of the task force and to the community on the completion of the memorial. May it stand forever as a testament to remembrance and honor for the 137 men who died. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. We're here in St. Catharines today. The St. Catharines Standard has been writing about this a great deal. Chris is the MPP for St. Catharines, but it's worth remembering, and he noted, the canal actually runs the length of Niagara. It's a 43.5 kilometers, is that correct? And so the people who lived in Port Colborne and in Welland and in Thorold and, of course, St. Catharines saw their fair share lost today. And as Chris Biddle pointed out, the canal is an essential part of our life in Niagara. Our economy, our landscape, even our social and our cultural experiences here are informed by the presence of the canal. The Regional Municipality of Niagara recognized the importance of this memorial with a grant that ensured that this project could move forward on time for today's unveiling. And with that in mind, I'd like to bring to the stage the chair of the regional government, Alan Caslin.
Well, thank you, Grant, and welcome everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Before I begin, I would like to recognize one of my colleagues here, Bruce Timms, whose persistence is one of the reasons why Regional Council is so engaged in this project and pays so much attention to the Welland Canal and everything that to do with the Welland Canal. Also like to recognize the former MPP of St. Catharines, Rick Dykstra, for getting this project started. And without his commitment, we probably wouldn't have had this memorial here today. So thank you to Rick. I'm honored to be here at this special event on behalf of Regional Council to unveil today's memorial and also to commemorate the 137 lives that were lost during the construction of this canal. In June of this year, Niagara Regional Council committed $234,000 in funding to this important memorial through the region's Waterfront Investment Program. This program seeks to provide sustainable investment in waterfront areas across Niagara. It's an honor to be able to fund a significant project like this in remembrance of those sacrifices of the fallen workers. There is an ongoing significance to the Welland Canal, to Niagara's economic development, to the marine industry, and also to our manufacturing sector. There was over $276 million in trade in 2015 running along the canal right here beside us. The canal also sustains thousands of direct and indirect jobs in our community. Each year, communities across Niagara commemorate the importance of the canal with the top hat ceremonies. We celebrate the first upbound and downbound ships of the season. And to highlight the significance of the canal to our communities, that being St. Catharines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Thorold, Welland, Port Colborne, which is truly the reason why we are connected in Niagara. I'd like to thank each and every one of you today for joining us and sharing this important opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. The community response to this memorial has been nothing short of astonishing. In 20 years that I've been working as a journalist, I don't know that I can think of a single example in Niagara that has galvanized so many people in so many different ways. People listened to the stories of the fallen, they signed petitions, they made donations, and even local artists were inspired by the lives and the stories of the fallen workers. This memorial has inspired a play, songs, at least 2 exhibits that I'm aware of, and 1 upcoming book. So I'm proud to introduce the company of an original play that was produced this fall by the Essential Collective Theatre Company in St. Catharines, called the Welland Canal Play. It was written by Kevin Hobbs, directed by Monica Dufault, and this is going to be the first of several scenes they share with us today, and this one takes place on the construction site in 1919.
Plug in.
Do you know who I am?
You are Mr. Grant, the engineer in charge. You run this canal.
And you are one of those union dissenters. Is that why you speak to me this way?
I'm just a man who fixes the machines. The new machines that make your canal work. I don't want trouble, sir.
Well, let me tell you. Remind me of your name again.
Sal Moretti, Mr. Grant.
And how long have you been here, Sal Moretti?
My family has lived on this canal for 7 years. I worked beside this canal, inside a factory, making machines for the canal. From this canal, it taught me English. It taught me to live in Canada, in Niagara, until I went off to war and fought for the country. Now I am back. I fix the machines I built inside the factory.
And you wish to continue doing so?
Mr. Grant, in 1912, a man met me when I got off the train here in Welland. He promised me something.
What was that?
More.
More?
See, I want more. More from this canal. I want it for my family, for my grandchildren when they come. I want it for the men I fought side by side with in battles. This canal, it's no longer only for the better class.
Mr. Merritt, Sal, you don't realize you're not asking for more. You're asking for less. Fewer hours means less pay.
I want the same pay and more time to spend it, like the union says.
Sal, careful.
You should listen to your friend. You should know most workers on the canal prefer a 10-hour workday. There is no union solidarity. You're tearing yourselves apart. This labor dissatisfaction impacts the canal. It impacts you.
Pay us more for an 8-hour day. That'll solve everything.
You were in the war?
See,
How much did you make per day?
$1.10.
How much do you make here?
Some of us make 5, some of us make 8.
And you're not even being shot at.
We are still up to our waist in water and mud. There's the rain, the heat, the mosquitoes. There's the steam machines rumbling, the riveting machines pounding. Men are blinded by gas. No, we are not being shot at. But make you no mistake, men are dying. From foolishness, from tiredness, from selfish people who call themselves my boss and cut the corners.
Not me.
No, but the ones you give the contracts to. Mr. Grant, when I first arrived here, I knew nothing but farming poor lands. I could barely speak your language. Now I have seen what greedy men do in factories and stupid men do on battlefields. I have survived them both because I have been educated.
You speak too freely.
I'm just a man who keeps your machines running, Mr. Grant.
You have been heard, but you are not a man with whom I can agree.
You may have no choice. Nearly 50 years ago, canal workers started arguing for an 8-hour day. Like this machine, the wheel goes round and round, and all we hear is teeth grinding. But times have changed. This fight is around the world. This place of water may light the fire for change. Take it from a man who cares for your machines.
Get back to work.
Oh Captain, we're back from the war to take our true place and to battle no more. We're raising our shovel, we're doing our share. We sink in a pit and the wage is not fair. The war it continues, our homeland betrays. A pittance of wealth for 10 hours a day. Together we'll fight this, raise voices so high. We mustn't be weak or in work, we will die.
As I said before, the support for this project has been amazing, and much of it obviously would be financial. If that hadn't been the case, we wouldn't be here. And in your programs, you're going to see the names of individual donors, associations, service clubs, businesses, and corporations who donated to the memorial. You're also going to notice several references to our marine community and its associated labor communities. And this project simply would not have happened if it was not for the dozens of donations, big and small, from all of them. Many unions and labor associations contributed to the project, often within larger jointly made donations. And to continue the theme of sharing labor's perspective today, I'd like to invite to the stage Sid Ryan, who you may remember as the past president of the Ontario Federation of Labor. Sid?
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. I do appreciate the union agitator little portion of the play just before I came on to say a few words. Nice touch. But let me begin my remarks first off by saying how proud I am to be here and how honoured I am to be here to say a few words on behalf of the Labour movement. I had the distinct honour of representing over 1 million workers in Ontario over the last 6 or 7 years, and 250,000 public sector workers during my time as president of CUPE Ontario, a 17-year period. I want to say how heartwarming it is to see so many people show up today to honour workers that died on the job over 100 years ago, and the last one maybe a little over 70 years ago. I've attended far too many memorial services for workers killed on the job down through the years during my 30 years as a Labour leader in this country. And I've seen maybe 10 or 12 or 15 people show up. And here I can see hundreds of people in front of me and several more hundreds in the overflow room coming out to honour workers who gave their lives to a project, one of the great engineering feats of the 20th century, who gave their lives, 137 of them. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge the descendants and the family members and the relatives of those workers, because, you know, here's the thing about a worker that gets killed on the job. Yes, the person loses their lives, and in this particular case, it was all men. And of course, back then, they were the breadwinners in their families. But what we don't get to hear about is what happens after that person has passed away, and the family who's left behind, and the hardship that they go through. Keeping in mind that we didn't have the great social programs back in the 1930s or 1914 that we have today. So imagine the suffering and the poverty and the anguish those families went through. So that's why, for me at least, to come out today and see so many people acknowledging the lives and the contributions that these workers made to this great project. But you know, today, we still have in this country, we still have workers killed on the job. You know that we kill every single year, and I say we collectively, the industry and workers, sometimes through their own negligence, sometimes through employers' negligence, but every single year in this country, there are 300 workers die in Ontario alone. 80 of them through fatalities, just like these workers were killed on the job here. Some of them through diseases that they'll pick up from carcinogens in the workplace. They will have 300 of them every single year will die. And you know, one thing that we say in the Labour movement, every single accident is preventable. And I want to leave this word, particularly with employers in the audience today. Please make certain that you provide the health and safety equipment to your workers, because every single accident is preventable. I'd be remiss if I didn't finish my remarks by thanking the mayors of Port Colborne and Welland and St. Catharines and the regional chair for all of the work that they have done in terms of contributing to this particular project. I know now that we will have a wonderful place in St. Catharines where workers on April the 28th, which is the National Day of Mourning, will have a location to come into from across the Niagara region and beyond and be able to stand in solidarity and think about those workers who have given their lives to some great projects like the Welland Canal. Thank you very much, my friends, for this contribution to workers who are killed in the job.
We're at Lock 3 today, and most people don't know that this was one of the more difficult locations during the canal construction. There were at least 4 earth slides during the construction between 1917 and 1922, and at least 5 of the fallen workers died within eye shot of where we're standing today. The stories that we've been sharing of these workers in the St. Catharines Standard for the last 5 years have also inspired a local composer to write a song about the fallen. Penny Blake of Welland could not be here with us today, but her song, For the Workers They Came to Build, will be sung now for the first time in public. So while our performers are going to set up, I'm going to read a short message that was sent to us from Penny. Thank you for including my song in this event, the long overdue memorial to the fallen workers of the Welland Canal. Although I'm not able to be here for this event, I'm very honored to be part of it. My song expresses my deep appreciation for the canal and its importance to our region, our country, and the workers who built it. Thank you very much.
A river ran right through the land. It followed its own path. With fields and forests wild and raw, a promise to be made. It needed work, it needed sweat, and people with their dreams to meet with courage all they met. To leave a legacy they came to build. They came for freedom. They came to make the future live for us to see. They came with hopes and sometimes sorrows, but the dream lives on for you and me. For 50 cents a day they toiled, a deep cut was required. 4,000 men, young, old, and strong, to link the water's power. We lost too many brave souls then, fathers, sons, and brothers. They persevered and overcame. And now we must remember they came to build. They came for freedom. They came to make the future live for us to see. They came with hopes and sometimes sorrows, but the dream lives on for you and me. We cannot say how much we owe to those that came before us. They dug, they fought, and even died for all of our tomorrows. If we're to follow in their steps, we must be open-hearted and make a land for everyone. The dream has only started. They came to build. They came for freedom. They came to make the future live for us to see. They came with hopes and sometimes sorrows, but the dream lives on for you and me. But the dream lives on for you and me.
The Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial Task Force has asked me to thank another group of dedicated people who provided monumental support for this project. As this project began to take shape, the organizers of the Italian Fallen Workers Memorial in Toronto provided significant amount of assistance in sourcing information of the 22 Italian workers who died during the canal construction. So I'd like to thank Marino Topan and Paolo Bretta. You're in the audience today? Okay. Oh, there they are, in the corner. Thank you so much for your assistance. And I think now's a good time to point something out, particularly in a day and age when we hear a great deal of anti-immigrant rhetoric in this country, sometimes even in our own community. For those who are unaware, the 137 men who died came from 16 different nations. And if you look at the backside of the tent today, you'll see the flags of their home nations. Every single man who died came to this country for a better life. And he died building a canal that was designed to try to make this country stronger. And it's something we ought not to forget. On maybe somewhat less serious a note, and if you allow me the brief indulgence, I suppose I should explain why I'm up here at all and how we arrived at this day, some 85 years after a memorial to the fallen was promised by James Mannion, who was the federal minister of railways in Canals, in 1932. This project began, as a lot of good stories do, over a cup of coffee. I first learned about the fallen workers in 2013, sitting at a very tiny table at a Starbucks with Arden Fair, who was the former curator of the St. Catharines Museum. And Arden brought me a gigantic file that looked like he had murdered the better part of a redwood forest, which on the table was very small, so it didn't really leave much room for our venti coffees. But what he brought me was essentially a book of the dead. It was based on the work of local historians Robert Taylor and Roberta Strahan, who had written extensively on the Welland Canal, and Arden's file contained a list of what at that time was 124 men known to have died during the canal construction. When the canal opened in 1932, Robert Mannion promised there would be a memorial to the fallen, whom he considered to be peacetime heroes. But for reasons that still to this day remain somewhat unclear, it never happened. And Arden passionately believed this was an historic oversight that needed to be corrected. And if you know Arden at all, he has the tenacity of a lobster when he gets his claws into something and just does not let go. And I think now is an appropriate time to point out that Arden played such a pivotal role in the development of this project, we absolutely would not be here today. And I know he does not want me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Arden, where are you? Where is he? He's got the bright green gloves on. There he is. I told you, Arden. I told you. I used Arden's massive file as a launching pad to start writing a series of stories about the fallen workers for the Standard. My editor, Wendy Medcalf, who unfortunately couldn't be here today but sends her regards to everyone, thought that we could be doing more than just writing stories about the fallen. So we started to actively advocate for the construction of a memorial. We published an online petition calling on all levels of government to build the memorial, and thousands of readers signed it. Some of you in the audience today may, in fact, have signed it. What was really interesting is that some of those who signed it were actually family members of the fallen who at that time didn't appear on any lists, which gave Arden and myself and a small team of dedicated historians more leads to follow, which eventually brings us to today's total of 137 men killed. On May 12, 2013, Arden, Wendy, and myself presented our petition to City Council, and the next day, then Mayor Brian McMullen, who is in the audience somewhere, just raise your hand quick, Brian, I know you're here, can't hide from me. He struck a task force the next day with the sole purpose of building the memorial. That task force would include political, labor, business, and community leaders, and starting from literally scratch, they had to find a site for the memorial, they had to find an artist to design it, and they had to raise the $1 million or so in order to build it. It's been a 5-year process of hard work and debate and long hours for the task force, and they're the ones who have brought us here to this day. So I'd like to take just another moment, if I can ask all members of the task force present today, past and present, if you could please stand or raise your hand. We'd like to thank you for your hard work today. Now, there was a national design competition to select an artist, and that competition ended up with the selection of Derek Revington of Toronto as our lead artist. His design team included Jonathan Terrell, Lisa Rappaport, Eric Claver, and Carl Limkin from the Plant Architect Incorporated. Together, they created a remarkable memorial that reflects our community's history, its landscape, and our relationship to the ancestors who were lost here. And once you walk through this memorial, and I've said this many times, I don't know that this city or this region is prepared for the scope and the feeling of it when you're there, you're going to recognize that Derek has created a really special place for remembrance and reflection for our community. So without further ado, can I please welcome to the stage architect Derek Revington.
Thanks very much, Grant. This is truly humbling. The vision and support for the creation of the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial has been extraordinarily inspiring, and we feel deeply honored to have been invited into your community to contribute to its realization. Very rarely in one's career is one entrusted with giving form to such a meaningful vision, in fulfillment of a promise that was made over 85 years ago to honor the 137 men who tragically lost their lives while building one of the world's greatest works of 20th century engineering. Durable, stable, and epic were the words used to describe the community's ambition for the memorial. The great saga of the canal's construction was to be told again so that it resonated in a new way, giving enduring expression to the value and significance of the lives of the fallen and to the triumph of the canal's construction. Expanded and deepened reflection is the aim of art. A great memorial should engage and awaken you at every level of your being, cause you to think and feel more deeply through the encounter. Who were these men whose lives were cut short so that the Great Lakes could be bridged? You begin to ask questions about your own life, about the lives of those whose absence you now feel, and about the invaluable lives of those men and women working in construction today. As you ask these questions within the memorial site, you are becoming an historian, an artist in your own life, and in the river that links you to their lost lives, reaching through time and into the future. As renowned Canadian poet Anne Carson has said, one who asks about things, about their dimensions, weight, location, moods, names, holiness, is an historian. But the asking is not idle. It's when you're asking about something that you realize that you have survived it, and you must carry it, or fashion it into a thing that carries itself. Our challenge was to fashion a memorial that carried itself, with or without words. A place where family members, workers in the labor community, and people passionate about the canal could come to find solace and strength, and to enjoy the clarity and serenity it would afford. Gravity and grace come face to face in this memorial. The epic grandeur of the canal's construction, the tragedy of lives lost, the lives of the community, and our own lives are reflected here. It is through these motions of exchange between then and now, durability and fragility, life and death, that the memorial lives and endures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. And when you walk through later today, just please take a moment and think about what he said. It's a truly remarkable memorial when you get to see it right up close. We're spending a lot of time talking, rightfully, about the 137 men who died building the canal. The truth, though, is that it took thousands of men to build the canal. And the workers who saw their friends and family members die, sometimes in truly horrible circumstances, didn't get to take a day off. There wasn't a sick day, there wasn't grieving days, there were no union contracts. They had to show up for work the next day and carry on despite their losses. This next scene from the Welland Canal play is a verbatim account from one of those workers. Now, canal worker John Hines did not have all of his facts straight at that time, just for the historians in the audience who may want to nitpick. But his story is nevertheless a powerful look inside the life of somebody who helped build the canal.
Yeah. So here's how it went. It was August 1st, 1928. It's a day like any normal day, except we had the big move. We had the gate at Lock 6 to set in place, and there were two cranes working side by side. And this one here, it was clamped to the tracks. It was stationary. It couldn't move. And then this one here, it was allowed to move. So you had to set the beams in place before the gate was attached. So with both cranes working together, they picked up a beam, and they went high. I mean, whew, they went as high as the top to the bottom of Niagara Falls. So they picked up a beam, and the one here held her on one end, and this one here could move so that they could straighten her. So they picked up a beam and they turned her, and they got just behind the gate. Well, it was then that the cable that was stationary broke, and there was nothing to keep that other crane from going over. I mean, that big beam was just too much for one crane, you know. So she went over and she went down behind the gate and she pushed the gate over. And it just cut men in two and everything. You see, there was men working on the inside of the gate. There were so many men, they were just doing their job. And it was a mess. God, what a mess.
We keep referring to the men who died here as the fallen, or as the 137, or the fallen workers. They're usually this unpersonal, nondescript number or description, but they were people, just like you, just like me. I was fortunate to be able to write about them for a long period of time, and a lot of those stories stick with you, like the woman who never got remarried after her husband died, and for years her most well-known idiosyncrasy was to turn her wedding band constantly, all the time. There was another woman who apparently wore black for the rest of her life, and another who every night she could be heard in her room muttering, and her daughter in the room next door didn't know what was going on, and finally she got up the courage to sneak over and have a listen, and her grandmother wasn't crazy, she wasn't having an episode, she was speaking to her lost husband and praying that everything would be all right. So it's important we actually know the names of the men who fell. So I'm going to ask to come to the stage to read the names of the fallen family members of those who were lost: Ann Dodge, Susie Hastings, Doug Owenschuk, and Roger Stenson. If you could please come to the stage, please.
William Merritt.
George Robinson. My great uncle, John Alexander Patterson III.
Stana Banasho.
Giuseppe Fiore.
Stanko Dupalo. Osip Picalo.
Arthur Wilson.
Giovanni Moretti.
Staffy Ilajevich.
Camilio Mastericola.
James West. Edwin Crow.
Giuseppe Ferris.
Carmine Aiello.
Antonio
Montemuro.
Albert Wellard.
Nicola Nucalazzo.
Hudson Payne.
Richard Gardner.
Joseph Foster.
Vasily Parakopovich.
Benjamin Price.
Reginald Fenimore.
David McDonald.
Michael Vaknovic.
James Sharp.
George Mitz Anderson.
My great-grandfather, John Thomas Seaman.
Luigi Rantusi.
William Tebow.
Alexander Chisholm.
Antoine Sherreri.
George Saku.
David Kennedy.
Otto Monson.
Ivan Maronick.
Benjamin Kellett.
Magnus Dugan.
Attilio Casseron.
Giovanni DiBiase.
William Douglas.
William Hutchinson.
Thomas Lindsay.
Wilfred LaCroix.
Gorman LaRocque.
William Gordon.
Murdo Murray.
Ross Campbell.
Stefano Costantino.
Donald MacDonald.
Rocco Inazia.
Lizire Lynch.
Lionel Lynch.
Thomas Alder.
Charles Phillip.
John Cruzel.
Josip Osterayas.
Timothy Brady.
Frederick Bagnall.
Amos Pierce.
Daniel MacDonald.
Alvin Watt.
Giuseppe Martinelli.
Alexander Panescu.
James Horton.
Stefan Jusko.
Carmine Piro.
John Swan.
Janos Vodella.
Ira Mahone.
James Saunders.
Janosch Koran.
Leo Romke.
Francesco Plantade.
Antonio Collini.
Elmer Wild.
Peter Boyle.
Marcin Vakovic.
Akil Beeson.
Henry Nealis.
Robert Lethbridge.
Rocco Frascati.
James McCoy.
Carlo Bianco.
Lauren Whitwell.
Andrew Harkness.
Peter Solonic.
Giuseppe.
Giuseppe Mite.
Edward Morin.
John Bode.
Charles Lynch.
Mihaly Bayus.
Luigi Bosceloetti.
Joseph Carrick.
James MacArthur.
James C. MacArthur.
Samuel McMullen.
Chester Overholt.
Theodore Smolko.
William Talashkevich.
Alexander Wilson.
Leon Dion.
James Sawchuck.
John Simmons.
Charles McInnes.
Joseph de Moulinet.
Mike Koner.
Carolee Cady.
Robert Thompson.
Steve Kopenak.
Luigi Frantangelo.
Fergus Nottingham.
Fernley Bassett.
William Stanbury.
Janos Fader.
Danielle Langell.
Joseph Stahl.
Thomas Pollard.
Archibald McKinley.
William Bassett.
Folko Palolazzi.
My grandfather, David Radford.
Andrew Ryan.
Sheldon Hansler.
Edward Smith.
Lloyd Ticey.
Albert Corkum.
Elmer Hines.
Richard McAllister.
Francesco Berardi.
Henry Benson.
My grandfather, Michael Honestchuk.
John Hawthorne.
Luther Kuchenbecker.
Harry Watt.
And Samuel Brennan.
As one of many descendants of those being honored here, thanks to all in government and community who have worked tirelessly to make today happen. There's a calming peace in knowing that this sad story is so carefully told as a small part of history. A sigh, perhaps, of many souls at last laid to rest. Such events permanently changed the course of many families, with unintended consequences and hardship, though many who were affected remain forever more grateful for the opportunity that made this great place we call Canada our home.
Tis a mighty undertaking is the Welland Canal, and it's a great and varied business, gets the thinking world enthralled. We can gaze on excavations, concrete walls, and giant logs. Our brains reel at the magnitude of Mother Earth and rocks. If water keeps flowing and time keeps on growing, who knows where we're going to be? Freely flow to serve our own demands. We opened up this place of ours to ships from other lands. The good and bad has been a ride, continues to this day. But don't doubt Mother Nature's side, respect the waterway. If water keeps flowing and time keeps on growing, who knows where we're going to be? For the sons of the toil who worked every day and gave up their lives when they fell to their fate, let us give a sincere prayer for those who lost their loved ones here. Keeps flowing and time keeps on growing, who knows where we're going to be? And when in retrospection we view this work with pride, we'll think of those who fell before across the other side. Many made a sacrifice, the victories are long. And step by step we take this path, together we are strong. If water keeps flowing and time keeps on growing, who knows where we're going to be?
Thank you so much. Our final words of the day are going to come from the chair of the Welland Canal Fallen Workers Memorial Task Force. You might know him better as the mayor of St. Catharines, Walter Sendzik.
Thank you very much, Grant. It is very much a remembrance weekend. Yesterday we gathered to remember those who fought for our freedoms, such as Albert Ryder from St. Catharines, who fought in the Battle of Passchendaele and didn't come home. And today we gather to remember the 137 fallen workers who didn't return home after a hard day's work. It has been an honor to be the chair of the task force, but I've only played a very small role. There's a lot of folks who made sure that that promise by R.J. Mannion was fulfilled so long ago. And I want to start by thanking Grant LaFlèche and the Standard for taking on this initiative when it was brought forward by Arden Fair. And I couldn't think of two more tenacious individuals than Arden and Grant. And without them, I don't think that idea would have come to fruition here today. So please give them a round of applause. I'd also like to acknowledge former Mayor Brian McMullen and former St. Catharines MP Rick Dykstra, because a lot of the legwork that goes into a project like this does start with the political capital for bringing forward the ideas that come to either council or government. It's that initial push of energy that's required, and those two started the task force, and they populated the task force, so it wasn't just government, it was labor, it was members of the community, and 5 years from then till we're here today, we now see a great memorial in honor of those fallen workers. So please thank Rick and Brian for their leadership to start this initiative. I would also like to thank Chris Biddle for his leadership in ensuring that the funds that would be required to complete this project were brought to fruition. So Chris, thank you, and to the current government for their support as well. To the entire research committee at Brock University, the Department of History and Digital Humanities, historians and researchers who helped illuminate the untold stories of these men, thank you for all your countless hours and volunteer that you put into this project. By sharing their stories, we have learned a great deal about the development of our community, and most importantly, we have learned the names, the stories, and the lives of these heroes in peace. I'd also like to thank our donors, and this project was a project that had what would be a big price tag, and a lot of folks thought that we wouldn't be able to raise the funds that we did, and we did because of the donors. The marine and shipping industry, the labor community, local business leaders, friends, and descendants from far and near. Without your support, without your generosity, without your understanding of the significance of this project, we wouldn't be standing here in front of such a beautiful memorial. So thank you very much. Also to our city staff who put in countless hours after hours. And I can think of Rebecca Kahn and Kathleen Powell and their team who really made sure that we were doing what we set out to do at the task force day in and day out. Without their support and the support of the museum, we wouldn't have a full understanding of the history that we're here remembering here today. So thank you to the city staff for all their work. And I do want to say, it's not in my notes, but to the construction workers who made this memorial a reality here today, Rankin Construction and their team, they worked a lot of hours over the last 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that it came to fruition here today. And I want to thank them for all of their hard work over the past 3 weeks for making sure that this was what we're going to be looking at. So thank you to the construction community. And finally, this one individual, the campaign chair, Mr. Greg White. After completing his long and respected career in the marine industry, Greg retired as president and CEO of Algoma Central Corporation, and I think I was the first phone call after he announced his retirement. And it was, Greg, if you're willing to come out of retirement, I got a job for you. When I explained the job, without missing a beat, he said I would do it. And I got to tell you, without Greg, we would not have hit the target that we set as a task force. Greg really picked up the phone, and he called all of his friends in the marine industry and in labor and convinced them why this was so important to our community. So Greg, please stand up and be acknowledged for the work that you did. I know you're here, and you're a very humble individual. Where are you, Greg? Are you behind me? Over there by the flag. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you. So with that, on this weekend of remembrance, we take time to pause and reflect and remember. Memory slowly fades with time, but now the fallen workers who built our community and national economy will be remembered for generations to come, and for that, we are eternally grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to the end of today's ceremony, and we'd like to invite, and Mr. Mayor, the mayor will lead the family to the end of the memorial site to witness the unveiling of the Gates of Remembrance first, and the rest of you can follow behind them. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes of caution when you do see the site. The sod, as you'll see, is super fresh, and it's kind of like quicksand, so try to stay off the grass as much as possible. And more importantly, there are refreshments and heat inside the museum, so you're welcome to join us there afterwards. So merci, thank you for coming, and thank you again for everybody who made this a day to remember. Thank you so much.
You fickle wind, blow my Johnny, someone new to love him up in Welland. Oh, whoa, you fickle wind, won't you blow my Johnny, someone new to love him up in Welland. High up on top the escarpment, just as far as the eye can see, the flowers of Niagara, they are God's greatest gift to me. The flowers of Niagara, cherries and peaches and pears, proving the worth of this elegant earth with a fragrance that lightens the air. No matter where I am standing, Port Colborne to Stony Creek, the flowers of Niagara are God's greatest gift to me. Now some would divine that the juice of the vine is what carries our spirit above, but my happiest hours declare that these flowers are the pure distillation of love. For the flowers of Niagara remain in my memory, when with a heart light as air you wove in your hair a bouquet of sunlight you plucked from a tree. And I've wandered too far in this country, from Newfoundland out to BC, when the flowers of Niagara were God's greatest gift to me. There's a young boy sitting on the shore not far above the locks. Fishing pole and broad-brimmed hat, his back against a rock. You might think he's fast asleep, but should he hear the wake of a passing ship wash on the shore, he's quickly wide awake. Be it brigantine or barkentine, a schooner or a barge, be it a salty, a laker from the smallest to the large, be it steam or sail or tow rope that moves her up the stream, it's still the stuff of dreams. The float is bobbing up and down, our young lad doesn't care. This boat is leading his imagination anywhere. He's heading up to Thunder Bay with Voyageur canoes, or he's off to war in Europe with the Haida passing through. Be it icebreaker or scow or captured German submarine, the Royal Yacht Britannia with all her lights agleam, be it heading down to dry dock for a scrape, a paint, a mend, or to the graveyard at Ramey's Bend. The Welland takes a young lad down to the sea in ships, past cities with their buildings taller than Niagara's cliffs, through the 1,000 islands where bold pirates once made free, past belugas of the Saguenay, out to the open sea. Be it pilot, boat, or dredge, be it new or older hulk, be it tanker or a tug, cargo and barrel or in bulk, be it diesel, sail, or tow rope that moves her up the stream, it's still the stuff of dreams. William Hamilton Merritt would stare at the water as it flowed down the 12-mile creek. There's enough in the stream to keep his mill wheel turning today, but there might not be next week, for the temperature rises and the water level drops and the wheel slows down and it finally stops. William Hamilton Merritt would tear at his hair and wonder at the whim of his God, who gave him this grand opportunity for fortune and left it so fatally flawed. If he could just dig a ditch to bring water from the Welland, then the wheel would keep on turning, there'd be flour he could sell. And so William Hamilton Merritt used the carrot and the stick to make politics bend his way. There were lots of other businessmen who knew if he got water power, they too could find a way to make it pay. So he got himself elected to the family compact and used public-private partnerships to get money for his contracts. William Hamilton Merritt wasn't scared to reach farther than the average fellow in Niagara. Just listen to a list of some of the things he started and see if it doesn't stagger ya. Salt mine, flour mill, distillery and store, canal, career at Queen's Park, and a bridge over the gorge. And it all started when William Hamilton Merritt would stare at the water as it flowed down the 12-mile creek. Come all ye lads, both stout and strong, shovel and mud, shoveling mud, and pay attention to my song. The deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood. From Allenburg to Port Robinson, shoveling mud, shoveling mud. From cold gray dawn to setting sun, the deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood. 2 miles long, 50 feet deep, shoveling mud, shoveling mud. Mr. Merritt's mighty lucky that we work so cheap. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood. $50 will buy you a day, shoveling mud, shoveling mud. Muscle and heart against Chippewa clay. The deep cut runs red with Irish blood. Deep cut runs red with Irish blood.